Hey kids, my name is Konrad. I'm 40 years old, what you consider a nerd. I have a lot of nerdy hobbies like owning an ant farm and data science. I used to be a professional data scientist, also doing a lot of statistics. And I have a huge passion for evolutionary biology, evolution itself. Since I read Richard Dawkins, Professor Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene the first time, also Darwin and the Ancestor's Tale, I was always amazed of biological systems, self-sustaining systems, self-replicating systems. And I like to bring my both passions, data science and evolution together, I thought. I read this book. It's basically just physics, math, and statistics. And I realized, okay, yeah, abiogenesis, the creation of life, the come into existing of life, is itself basically just math and probability distributions. So I came up with this idea. I want to show you my the biggest game simulator, the evolution simulator. I thought it would be fun to have something like UI, very easy to run, very easy to maintenance, and very easy to display to show the basic principles of evolution. That's the first version, and I show you the rules. Let's go in. Um, we have three kinds of variables. We have the environment variable, we have the genetics variable, and we have some cell properties. Of course, they are dependent from each other in some or another way, and I lead you through this. We start with the initial cell properties. So as you can see on the right, this is our environment. You can see some dots, there's a pattern in it, and also the background varies from blue to red. This is basically just the temperature. I have to come up with some assumptions, I have to come up with some stuff, just limiting the variables at the beginning. Okay, you can see here in the middle, this is our mother cell. Let's call her Eve. You can see in the upper window it's generation 1, and Eve has some properties like we start with an energy amount of 20. Eve is capable to consume 50% of the energy she found. In the environment, you can see these yellow dots. These are the energy packages. Each energy package contains energy amount of 10. And Eve is capable to consume 50% of that. The other 50% is just wasted. Eve has a production gap about 20. That means if Eve consumes two of these packages that appear randomly around Eve, she will reproduce. She will split into mother cell and the daughter cell. You can see also there's a temperature range. In Eve's case, it's 30 to 70. Means in this range, Eve is capable to do metabolism. She's capable to eat and use energy. Outside this range, Eve is not able to produce or reuse the energy anymore. So Eve has to stay in this range. Okay, you can see energy drain. That means per second, Eve is losing 0.01 energy points. And also there's a sickness rate. It means in every minute, Eve has a zero point 0.2 chance of just dying. We need some uncertainty in here. So these are basically the rules. How is Eve moving through the environment? Involuntarily. It's just random movements into one or another way. And Eve is hitting these energy packages by sheer chance. There's no magic behind this. And while Eve is moving around, the environment is shifting slightly. You can see here the environment variables. We have a mean temperature about 50 degrees and the temperature variance about 15 degrees. And we can also adjust the amount of packages each minute. Let's adjust this to 45 degrees and make the variance a little bit increase the variance. And okay, 75. Okay, the most important thing is the mutation rate. I think every one of you familiar with evolution theory knows that mutation rate means that each daughter cell or each individual which is a descendant from another organism has some cumulating copy errors we call mutations, and this leads to another property in a child than in the mother, for example. So we have a mutation rate about 5%. What does 5% mean? If we look back into the properties of Eve, we can see the reproduction gap, the consumption rate, the temperature range, the metabolism, the energy drain, and the sickness. These are the properties we alter by a random value between plus 5% and minus 5%. It's completely random. By the way, metabolism means how fast Eve is capable to move around. It's just the speed. And also, the higher the speed, the more energy Eve is using. And these parameters we alter by the mutation rate of plus minus 5%. So each daughter cell varies a very small amount from the mother cell. That's the idea. And we start our simulation. Let's go. You can see here the KPIs, the key performance indices we use for our evolutionary experiment. We start with a population of 1. You can see here the growth rate. It's 0, of course, because it's paused. The energy efficiency, it just means how much of the energy produced in the environment is used up in each minute, and also what is the current living highest generation. And you can see at the bottom the elapsed time. So let's start. Reset the simulation, and we go on. We can see here Eve moving around. Some energy packages are randomly appearing. The background is shifting slightly, the temperature, and Eve is randomly moving through the water. And we're accelerating our experiment because we don't have that much time. And you're supposed to see the first, here we go. There's a first split up. Eve divided into 2 cells. The population was increasing. They are pretty similar, but incrementally the mutation rates will sum up and produce other offspring. So let's wait a second. Okay, you can observe exponential growth, and of course, as I told you, I'm a data scientist, so I'm very into data science and into analytics and statistics. You can see here now some results of a cluster analysis. This cluster analysis is conducted every minute now. And this cluster analysis is using some properties of themselves, like generation, energy amount, consumption rate, and reproduction gap, and temperature span, to cluster them into groups. And we can see here now we have 2 clusters distinguishable. Cluster 1 seems to have lower consumption rate. Cluster 2 a little bit more successful. 54% of the energy can be consumed compared to the consumption of cluster 1. And you can see here, okay, 3 more clusters. Now our cells are dividing into different stems. I speed up. I will be silent and speed up the whole thing. Let's wait for 1 hour. Okay, welcome back. 1 hour is over. Let's just take a look into the metrics. You can see slightly differences accumulated right now. The mutation rate also was applied on the RGB code of the colors. You can see if you look closely that they differ in the colors. There are some cells in darker blue and some in brighter blue. That's how it's supposed to be. That was the whole purpose. You can see also some cells popping up with a red surrounding. That means they are lacking energy. And you can see here a shift, or let's call it a drift, in the genetics as well. The genetics, the properties of themselves, by sheer coincidence. It's everything is random here, and you can see accumulating randomness leading to different stems. So let's look into the clusters. 3 clusters remained, and we can see that they are differing significantly by the consumption rate. The by far most successful cluster is cluster 1. We have a mean generation of 10 and a consumption rate of 48%, so it's a bit lower, and a higher reproduction gap. I can't explain this one right now, so let's go further with the analysis. But if you observe cluster 2, you can see that the consumption rate increased to 57%. So this cluster is capable to consume more efficient energy than the other cluster, and also cluster 3 with 60%. We can observe that the temperature gaps increased a little bit and the reproduction gaps remained on their level. So just give it another hour. Let's see what happens. welcome back. Now 2 hours passed and I think the results are amazing. If we look closer into this, we can observe single cells. We can look into the properties. For example, the now chosen cell has a consumption efficiency of 74%, which is, in my opinion, pretty amazing. Have in mind that Eve, our initial mother cell, started with 50%, so we can see a clear direction. If you observe the population growth, maybe you just noticed that we peaked around 130 and then we had a huge increasing to 200, peaked again, and now we are at 235. What does this mean? This means that despite the energy is heavily limited, these cells are all competing for the same amount of energy. They got more efficient. The population growth is possible because the same amount of energy is used more efficient. And that's what evolution is all about. Competing individuals leading to different types, different stems of cells with different properties. Some of them with different strategies. Let's look into the clusters. You can observe here on the right 5 clusters right now. The by far most successful, okay, by far most successful is probably not right because they are pretty heads-on equal. But we can observe in all them cluster that the consumption rate increased to values above 60%, 67%, 63%, 57%, 60%, 65%. Okay, not all of them. And we can observe what I expected, the reproduction gaps almost everywhere dropped below 20, what totally makes sense, because if there's a heavy limitation in energy per minute, the only way you can make copies of yourself is by reducing this reproduction gap and also use energy in a more efficient way. Also, as you can see here, the temperature intervals are constant. We can see in the cluster 5, okay, cluster 5 died out. Too late, because right now we don't have a serious pressure in temperature. I think we will change it. I think we will set the mean temperature up to 70%. We are now playing God a little bit, 75%. And now let's decrease the temperature variance to 20%. What we are supposed to observe is an immediate drop in the population. Our growth rate will drop into a negative value, as you can observe right now, because that's what is the main driver in evolution, catastrophic events that will lead to extinctions and only the fittest will survive. You can also observe that the colors in our cells differ more and more, and I think we will fast forward it and give it another hour. I come back, I think these are amazing results. If you look at the population growth, you might mention that after applying a huge selection pressure, we increased the temperature by 50% to 75%. That's a huge selection pressure. A lot of individuals died. You could observe a drop in the population from 200 to only 100 individuals. That's what we call a mass extinction event. Over half of all individuals died. And you can see here now the rebound effect. Besides, the whole population dropped to 100 individuals. It rebounded, and we are now more than before 250 cells. And this is how life finds a way. This is what evolution is about. After a radical shift and a huge selection pressure, the most efficient cells found a way. And if you look into the clusters, you might observe as well that after applying this pressure, the amount of clusters decreased and then increased again. And if we look in them, almost all clusters have a huge increase in their temperature gap to almost 100 degrees, 97 degrees, 91 degrees, 81 degrees. So these cell simulations adapted to a random rules and random distribution. The consumption rate also peaked at 70%. They increased indeed, and the reproduction gap decreased to 15, 16, only in cluster 3. The less successful cluster, it remained at 20. I think this cluster will die out as well. Okay, these were the first 3 hours in our evolutionary experiment. If you have some suggestions, write it in the comments. I will load this whole thing up into a live stream so you can stay tuned. You can observe it continuously, and I will give you an update for the next version. What I'm planning right now is to make it more complex. Maybe some light that will increase the mutation rate, like UV radiation, maybe body size shifting, maybe more distinguishable heat spots, more cycles in light and in the whole heat process, maybe some new properties and maybe some nice charts we can observe our analysis. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.